Print, email, Facebook, Twitter. More coral scientists look to commercial opportunities for large-scale reef restoration to prevent extinction. Media player, space to play, M to mute, left and right to seek, 0:0001:5700:0001:57. A dedicated team of scientists believes it could hold the answer to keeping the world's coral reefs safe from extinction. In a concrete hatchery on the northwest coast of the Philippines, a group of researchers is huddled together in the night, witnessing a rare moment of sexual reproduction. Red circles of light pinpoint the darkness as torches are waved over a row of square plastic buckets filled with seawater. If you shine a white light at them, they get shy and they don't have sex, said Kerry Cameron, a Southern Cross University PhD student from Coffs Harbour. This is mood lighting to set the tone. Despite their audience, hundreds of pink egg and sperm bundles slowly break free from their individual coral polyps and rise to the surface in miraculous unison. A bright marine biologist from Manila, Dexter De La Cruz, is beaming. This is an event in nature that few people can see. It's always a magnificent sight, he said. The hatchery is part of the Berlinau Marine Laboratory, a utilitarian building that looks out onto the Lingayen Gulf, about 280 kilometers northwest of Manila. Its empty halls are flagged with algal culture rooms and student marine labs, where dusty fans spin perpetually over beakers and microscopes. Restoring a damaged reef beside the hatchery sits a once spectacular coastline crippled by decades of dynamite fishing, where cheap explosives are used to stun and kill hundreds of fish, pulverizing the fragile coral reef in the process. The practice has since been all but stamped out in this part of the Philippines, but damaging aquaculture techniques, overfishing and warming ocean temperatures still threaten 95% of the reef system here. The problem is there are so few live corals on this reef now. They're not producing enough larvae during sexual reproduction to naturally regenerate the reef systems, said Peter Harrison, the Southern Cross University scientist who has been directing the project. But Professor Harrison's ambitions go beyond the mere science. He wants his research to help create an entire economy built around coral restoration. Just as foresters manage forests for production, then we need to be thinking of managing coral restoration at that larger scale, he said. He sees a future in which an entire economy is built around coral restoration, where companies could rear coral larvae, take it out of the research realm, and put it into management and potentially even a commercial activity, where companies might rear hundreds of millions of coral larvae from a genetically diverse series of different populations of different species. Healthy Reef sustains local population. The Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, under the umbrella of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, is funding his experiment, and has paid for the ABC to be here. What we're doing is capturing millions of larvae and creating a cloud that we put back on the reef during settlement, Professor Harrison said. That enables more corals to grow more quickly, and therefore start to restore the reef. The results have proven successful on a small scale. The most established restoration site is about the size of an Olympic swimming pool. It is a drop in the ocean, delivered through painstaking human intervention, but the evidence is there. Surrounded by a desolate underwater landscape, hundreds of new coral colonies have begun building a new reef and reproducing for themselves. The work is not lost on Boy A. Torino, the third-generation fisherman and caretaker of nearby Tamduyong Island. It's important because it's what sustains the family. It's what feeds our children, he said. He helps two other fishermen push a brightly painted raft out from the shore, as his wife and children watch from the shade of a bamboo hut. There needs to be a lot of coral, so that there's a lot of fish, he said. Expanding the project now, the research team is spreading its work and testing new techniques on a site nearby, the protected and picturesque 100 Islands National Park. It's expanding again the scope of what we're trying to do, Professor Harrison said. More than a dozen Filipino divers and volunteers are on hand for the job, working together under the surface to spread meters of netting across the degraded reef, pinning it to the sea floor. Plastic bags filled with filtered seawater and millions of pink, hand-reared coral larvae are then carefully passed from nearby boats to the divers. Mr. De La Cruz is among the crew, distributing the precious cargo into the protective nets to increase its chances of settlement. We cut the plastic and just squeeze all the larvae out. Like doing some icing on a cake, he said with a grin. Idea gaining momentum despite skeptics. There has been some skepticism in the scientific community regarding the possibilities of coral restoration, with projects such as Professor Harrison's seen as an admission of defeat in the face of climate change, or a beacon of false hope. We need to find solutions, but I don't think growing corals is part of that, James Cook University professor Terry Hughes has previously said. I think it's about changing people's attitudes and behaviors and getting carbon dioxide emissions down by transitioning away from fossil fuels as quickly as possible. Nonetheless, the idea is gaining momentum. In April, the federal government announced $100 million towards developing the science of coral restoration as part of a $500 million environmental package for the Great Barrier Reef. Marine ecologist Damien Burrows will stage Australia's first serious conference on reef restoration in July. The environment itself at the moment, with bleaching and rising temperatures and increasing intensity of cyclones, is turning the reef into something different to what it was, he said. Essentially it's being forced on us, so we really do have no choice but to invest heavily in this direction. Private enterprise may be the future. It would not be the first time private investors have been involved in safeguarding a coral reef. The Mexican state government of Quintana Roo is partnering with the hotel industry and a global insurance firm to protect 60 kilometers of reef off the coast of Cancun. We know that the loss of 1 meter of reef in a hurricane causes the loss of 3 meters of beachfront on the shore, said Rich Gilmore, the Australian project director for Nature Conservancy, which is behind the Mexican project. That directly causes a loss of visitation to the region, and that needs to be repaired as quickly as possible so they can get tourists coming back to stay at their hotels and in their restaurants and facilities. Mr. Gilmore said it was not unheard of for private investments to be made into ecological restoration. You can already invest in farmland. You can already invest in the carbon markets and the water markets. Investing in nature is just about doing those things in a slightly smarter way, he said. Professor Harrison said he had already had interest from the Great Barrier Reef's tourism sector. Corals of value, and therefore reef restoration will be a valuable process, he said. If it goes beyond the realm and capacity of individual research organizations to develop this process to the next stage, it may well be there's a commercial opportunity there in the future. Print, email, Facebook.